name is Elisa. If you've never met me, my name is Elisa, and welcome back to Sunday Morning Juice. Today, I am joined by Denisse Ojeda, a composer whose work lives at the intersection of intimacy, atmosphere, and cultural storytelling. Denisse, in a
Yes.
regular movie, we use music to believe the fiction, but in a documentary, the truth is already on screen. How do you support those big visuals without telling the audience how they should feel with the music?
Whenever I write music for a documentary, I make sure to have quiet moments so it's not just like wall to wall music. So making sure to leave space for, important moments, important dialogue. And yeah, so most of the music is very minimalistic. Obviously there are points where you can have big sections of music, but for the most part you want to kind of stay in the background and, support the story that way.
I know that one of your strengths is being precise and quiet rather than being loud and explosive. Have you ever had to convince a director that peeling the music back or having no music at all is the stronger choice?
Yes. I actually work on a documentary in 2023. I got hired and then they were like, actually, we're not sure if we need music. And I kind of agreed with them because the story was it was a very heavy story and there's a lot of dialogue. And when we discussed the music, I was like, all right, this is what I can do. And I wrote a demo and they put it to picture and they're like, honestly, we're just leaning more towards no music. And I completely agreed. And there was another project that same year that I worked on. It was a documentary about a journalist, and it was really driven by dialogue and by the character on the screen. And the director specifically wanted me to write an electronic score, like a driving electronic score. And it was a conversation where we were like, okay, he was really into music. He really liked my music. So he wanted it to be at the forefront. But, obviously we did have conversations of where to leave space and that sort of thing.
That's very collaborative, Do you
Yeah.
feel like mostly everyone that you work with is super open to collaboration?
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. So you have to believe that the audience is smart enough to understand a culture without being hit over the head with cliches. How do you write music that sounds authentic without falling into that trap of writing sonic tourism?
Okay. What do you mean by sonic tourism?
For example, Dia de los Muertos, that has a very pop culture specific sound. So I
Yeah,
guess so how do you give that your own twist?
gotcha. I'm actually working on a film for Day of the Dead.
Mhm.
It's funny you said that. And we had a discussion at the beginning of the project. Like the project is still, work post production, so we're still waiting on an assembly. But basically, I had a conversation with the director and the producer about doing original music for the film, but not doing your generic traditional Mexican music that you would expect in a film like this. Because you still want to have original music that supports the story, documentary type music. But if you lean too much towards the traditional Mexican music, sometimes it just doesn't work. So we want to keep a balance between the authentic stuff and also the music that will support the documentary.
Whenever you are composing something new, how do you get inspiration? Do you turn to maybe a silent walk, or do you use new instruments?
I usually like to work at night. So it's really funny because where I live is very quiet in general, but at night I find that I work the best. So whenever I have a new project and there is enough time for me to kind of just explore ideas, I'll just sit in my studio and play around my piano and kind of try to find ideas that way. I do go on walks, 'cause it's very beautiful outside. And that usually helps to clear my head. But I think the most helpful thing for me is writing at night and just, it's quiet, there's no one around, and yeah, that's kind of how I work.
Truly. So you're a night owl.
I am, yeah.
If a director said to you, "Can you make the music sound more purple?" What would you change about the track to make this happen? Or would you ask follow-up questions or both?
I feel like a little bit of both, but sometimes when you're working with a director that says that, they usually don't really like know what they want. So it's kind of like you have to ask some follow-up questions, but also like kind of have an idea of what that means, like maybe like purple means like a neutral tone just because like blue might be sad and red might be happy, so like sort of that stuff, read between the lines, but I think like asking follow-up questions is really important. But at the same time, sometimes they won't know the answer to the follow-up questions.
Truly. Okay.
Yeah.
You are a Sundance alum and you're working with huge networks. From the outside, it looks like a straight line up in terms of your career, but internally, how has your relationship with doubt changed?
Like I had a really good year in 2023. I had a film at Sundance, I had a film at Fright Fest in the UK, and I had a film that I semi worked on at Berlinale in Berlin. And that was a really good great year for me. It was also like I had just kind of like switched careers. I went from working as a trailer composer at a trailer music company, and I was also in music supervision, and I decided to leave and pursue composing full time. So that was my first year that I had like two features and a couple short films. But after that, the strikes happened in LA, so like it was like 2024 was a really hard year, and it's really easy to get into that mind space like, oh, am I doing the right thing, am I in the right career? But at the end of the day, I would talk to friends who are also composers, and they were like, no, we're all in the same boat. Like the writer's strike, you know we want to support the writers, but it also does affect everyone else, outside of the writers.
You compose high art scores for Smithsonian and prestige documentaries. What are you consuming when you need a break from that seriousness?
I like to watch, silly stuff like reality TV or something. Just like something to get me outside of like, very serious documentary styles, just something silly that makes me laugh.
You are pivoting from documentary to now narrative fiction. As you move into this next phase of your career, what habit or safety net are you deliberately forcing yourself to let go of to get to that next level?
I think like with narrative, it's just so different from documentary, because like fiction is something that I've always wanted to do and I've kind of done, but I think it's like a completely different way to tell a story, where music might be more prominent into like telling a story about a character. You have to develop these themes and like themes for different characters, and like you kind of do that in documentaries as well, but I think for narrative stuff, like that is like the most important thing you can do, and that's kind of how you get started in developing the score for this film.
If we were meeting 1 year from today, what do you hope we're talking about?
I hope we're talking about a new film, feature film that I worked on. I hope we're talking about, you know, um, I don't know, I really want to work on some new trailers. I'm kind of like in that in between where I'm still doing like ad and trailer work, but I'm also like trying to focus more on feature films and short films. So I'm hoping to talk about, exciting new trailers that I get to do, and obviously like I would love to do more feature films, so that would be great.
Yeah. Do you have like a genre that, well, a narrative fiction, but inside of that, maybe like a sci-fi, a drama?
I would love to do sci-fi and drama.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for the people that are listening, where can they find out more about you and your work?
So I my website is deniseojedamusic.com. You can also find my music on streaming platforms under my name and last name. And I am on IMDb if you ever want to look up my work. And social media, I'm on Instagram as o.denise. And yeah,
Denise, this has been awesome. Thank you so
thank
much for
you.
being with me.
Thank you so much for your time.
I started like, I looked up on my boyfriend.